Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tom. How you doing this morning?
I'm good. I've been driving around for the last hour,
Yes.
dealing with kids and whatnot, listening to NPR and the whole dump of the Mueller report.
Yes, we are in the middle of some messaging coming forward from both sides that is going to have an impact on a lot of different things that are going to show up next.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, I obviously that's probably something we don't want to get into in this episode, but it's like, oh my gosh, it's a lot to unpack.
It is. We're going to feel torn and overwhelmed. There's irritation and aggravation because different kinds of needs get met at different times. There's external triggering and then there's internal triggering. So the message is being said out this way, and then we then take this outside message and then assign it to or put it next to a message we have here. And then those two voices start bantering between each other inside our own head. Slowing this down is, kind of like a big part of what we're looking to talk about today, which is, how do you change the messaging from a nice dead person messaging or a monster person messaging into a honest, scary honesty, compassionate messaging that is kind of really what the adult brain needs to do, but regrettably the emotional brain and the kid brain kind of hijacks this.
Well, so let's start by sort of recalling what led us to this last time. What brought us to decide we were going to talk about these two opposing forces?
Well, the big theme of these podcasts is, how do you speak truth to either truth to power or truth to yourself or truth to another person, truth to your kids, to your family members. How do you do truth in the safest way possible? A certain vocabulary doesn't help us with that. If you go into label and diagnosis, you're not going to get a very favorable response. Nobody really likes to be called stupid or any other label or diagnosis, or they just don't. And so there's certain language that has, it might be truthful and it might be accurate, but it is not helpful.
That's a good point. Boy, isn't that true? Some people, I always refer to it when I'm talking to people that when someone goes down a road that's not helpful, despite, like some people might say, their better judgment, or despite sort of the obviousness that it's not going to accomplish their goals, I say, oh, they can't stay away from the light, like a moth to a flame or a mosquito to a light, even though they know they're going to get burned. And it's not the most productive use of their time. It's not going to achieve the ultimate goal. They still go toward the light.
That's correct. The triggering mechanism is so quick because of the way we've been taught to think and speak, that and modeled to speak and enticed to speak and think in a certain way. When people are reacting to the stimulus, and the emotion goes up instantly. There is a space between the stimulus and the response. There's not much of one, but there is space between there. And there's, if we listen to the thing from a compassionate place about what they've just said or did, then what happens is we actually can buy ourselves some time in our reaction. Usually the first request that I make of people is just repeat what the person just said to you back. Repeat it back to them what they just said. Right? So that buys you time. It buys you time to think. It buys you time to pick your next best sentence. It buys you time.
Well, and I remember
your own emotions.
I remember as you're training me that, you know, to learn how to communicate better for the purpose of sales, which is, you know, how we've engaged. You always told me to repeat back to them what they just said, because then they believe that you've heard them, that you've understood them, right? And it puts their brain in that right frame of mind to say, oh, okay, he's really listening to me. He gets me, you know, whether you do or not. I mean,
and whether you agree with them or not, it's not actually as important as making the initial connection of being heard. So, you know, if my set, at one time, my son, when he was 6 years old, you know, he's standing, you know, he's, you know, a 6-year-old, and he's standing in front of the refrigerator. He goes, "Dad, get me some ice cream now."
And so how did Bill Stierle react to that?
So Tristan, I'm guessing you feel frustrated and you really need some support, and you'd like me to support you in getting some ice cream. Did I hear that request correctly? Yeah. I turned his demand into a request. I identified the need that he was looking for, support, instead of letting my respect button get pushed, or my, you know, best parenting, this is the way you're supposed to talk to people in the world. No, it's not helpful. It is true, but it's not helpful. To correct a 6-year-old on his language choice is not helpful. It's not helpful because he's connected to, you know, wanting to get ice cream. And the support that he thinks that he needs to deliver communication in order for me to get it. He's working himself up to get ready for me to say no. Instead of, "Dad, I really like support to get ice cream. I'm 6 and you know, I can't, I'm not tall enough to get here, and I haven't thought about pulling a chair over yet. And I'm used to asking you for things." And that's really what he was asking me for, is support. His attitude was carrying irritated, you know, and some aggravation, because he irritated that he might hear no, aggravated that he can't do it himself. Now look how compassionate you feel as soon as I say that. Oh my gosh, the 6-year-old can't do it themselves. They can't get their own damn ice cream.
Right. I mean, most parents would probably say, "Hey, you're being rude," or
Right.
What I would tend to do is I would, you know, because I'm always trying to reinforce with my kids to say please and thank you and all this. I would say, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand you." You know, that would be my natural way to do it.
That's the way you've been taught to do it, is that be a little, well, if I was to judge it, it would be a little placating and a little bit of, "I didn't hear what you said. Could you say that better? Can you put please in there?" Here? And that's called the coaching parent. And the coaching parent's not bad. It's like not a bad thing. But really the empathy or the compassionate part is they're feeling irritated and aggravated, and their need support and self-independence to get their own stuff, you know. And so
Yeah.
and
Wow. That's so illuminating that, you know, again, empathy being the key. It almost seems like, empathy is Rome. All roads come back to empathy.
It all does. It's the subtext that rides underneath language. Like right now, I'm meeting my need for contribution and I feel delighted by it. That's my empathetic motivation. Yours is feeling inspired because your need for learning is being met, or energized because you're supporting me to get contribution to people. See, that's huge because that's your subtext and that's my subtext. And now, even as I'm stating it out loud, I feel better and you feel better. The rest of the audience is going like, thank you for the window about what's happening inside you.
Well, I think that's good for people to understand, especially as this is
Right.
one of our earlier episodes in this series.
Right. Exactly. The coming back around to the way truth gets impacted about this is that people believe the context sentence to be true instead of the subtext sentence is actually where the real truth is. Empathy is the real truth that's running underneath each sentence. And we've said this before in other episodes, but empathy only occurs when you get this feeling word and a need word and connect it, and then have an agreement that, did I have that right, Tristan? Are you requesting me to get ice cream and you need my support? He says yes. Empathy has occurred. And it says, well, I'd be happy to get to that. Now, if I didn't want to get to ice cream, I need to get ready for empathizing with that, which is I feel torn. Part of me wants to get you ice cream and another part of me wants to remind you that we're having dinner in half an hour. Which a 6-year-old could care less about.
Right.
But they're just going after their thought. The thought is ice cream is in that refrigerator over there. That's all they're doing is they're doing that.
Yeah.
And truth gets hijacked because all you got to do is say a monster person sentence and many people submit to that right away. Whether it's a congressperson or a senator or whatever, or the public, or a politician that is using a narrative that is a power over narrative, or narrative of I'm going to just get progress and roll over people to get there, and not really consider what an honest dialogue or what an honest, inclusive thing is. And you might already have the best answer. But if you're beating people up along the way, you will get compliance, but you will get backlash. That's what is missing. The people don't know that when you're in a monster person state, then what winds up happening is that, darn it, you're going to pay for it later, and you're going to pay for it in such a way that you're going to wish that you never did that. That's what you're going to do. You're going to wish that never took place. So the good news and the bad news. The good news is there's a way to navigate. There's a way to navigate through creating discernment in language to know when you're falling into one of the three spots. So if Tom, if I could put something up on the screen here, and I'll also, for the people that are listening audio wise, the people listen audio wise, I'll talk through it language wise too. So I'll be very descriptive of the slide that I'm about ready to put up. So what this slide is called, this slide is called the 3 states of waking up. So when I was coming up with it, I was going like, is this the 3 states or the 3 phases? No, it's states. I can be in state number 1, I could be in state number 2, or be in state number 3, and I'm not stuck in any one of these states. And I can move between each one of them to either energize humor, or to make a point, or to get power over instead of power with. But my request to the listeners is to, when these things come up, is that there's going to be 3 circles that sit on the screen. In the 3rd circle is where we want to spend most of our time. And what that looks like is I have a greater sense of what the feeling is that's happening inside me, as well as the feeling in another person. This is not a nice language. This is a power with language. What is the need that the person is going with? And what is the need that I'm advocating for? And when we do that, just like in our conversation between you and I, Tom, is that our need is known: contribution, service, awareness, effectiveness, how to communicate to reduce conflict. That's peace. Those are kind of big motives. So we know what kind of our needs are, and that's really what the truth of our conversation is. We're expressing them like I just did. It just rolled off my tongue a little bit. Now, fighting for them is the persistent action. And there's a vibrancy in when you're fighting for peace or justice. There's a vibrancy when you're fighting for fairness and equality, truth-telling, and we want to make sure that language isn't hijacked, because we're talking about a specific thing. And what it tends to is happening today is when somebody is making a point about something, the other person tries to say, wait a minute, but this matters too. It's like, yeah, but it matters. Like, as I move my hands here, it's like, yeah, this is important, but you're already getting that. But we're not getting this, but we're going to, and this narrative is not about respect. It's about justice and safety. It's not about respecting something. It's not about patriotism. It's about how fairness works and how justice works. That's really what we're talking. But what happens is the counter argument is the other side tries to raise this thing equal to the thing that the person's arguing, and that's called setting next to, or setting a side by side equality. And the current label that's going on right now is called false equivalency. But really what the thing is that they're really apples and oranges. It's respect looks like this and fairness looks like this. It's not not about that. And you'll hear media use it's a turn phrase called "what about?" Well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about this? And that's trying to buoy or pushed up the other narrative to diffuse the truth or the advocacy that the person is speaking about. Yeah, you're concerned about that. So, well, then if the third position, or the third circle that I have on the screen of the 3 states of waking up, is I have compassion and I'm able to express my needs in a really powerful way. Well, what are these other 2 circles that I'm going to bring up? And this is really where the violence starts taking place. So you be ready to hold on.
I can't wait.
The violence has to do with emotional management about how we want to stay connected to another human being. But as soon as emotion of an upset takes place, well, what happens is we need to become a nice dead person. And that's the first circle I have on the screen. And then a nice dead person is, I'm going to be submissive. I'm not going to be able to be in touch with or express the need that just got ran over by a truck. And I'm going to ignore my own needs. And then I'm going to submit or apologize. Submitting, not saying anything, or apologizing. Oh gosh, I'm really sorry about the needs I would like. Boy, your needs are much more emotional and much more important. And then this sort of numbness shows up. And the reason why the numbness has showed up is because people don't know how to talk out themselves out of a nice dead person position. The psychological label that can be put in this position is like either codependency has in this spot, or some of these other psychological labels. But if we don't know what our need is, then it's really hard for us to advocate for it. And our emotion or a fight, flight, and freeze gets stuck, and our body shuts down, and we walk away and ruminated about it for a week, 2 months, a year, 4 years. I mean, really awful. Really, really awful stuff. So that's the nice dead person, experience. Okay, so the problem then is, what's this second circle? And the second circle is going to be the monster person. Now, the monster person also is not in touch with their needs. Their needs haven't been met, but they can't take it anymore. They're going to stay in a place of anger or furiousness or reactivity. So the monster person keeps triggering the same stimulus narrative over and over again. And it creates a volatility. Whereas the nice dead person, they're numb. The monster person is advocating volatility. Now, some people might say, well, Bill, I just don't get angry, but I do get resentment and start to seethe. And then I ask, well, that means you're doing anger on the inside. How's that? How are your illnesses going? How's the sickness, and how's your body aches going? Oh, yes, my body hurts all the time. Yeah, I've been sick 4 times this year or 7 times this year. Gosh, I can't get rid of this chronic disease that keeps coming back. It's like, well, yeah, because your body is just taking the cortisol that it wants to express outside that it's not safe to, and you're just making your own self pay for it, and by doing monster person on the inside. Tom, the weird part about this is when I started going down this journey, I had this awareness. It's like, oh my gosh, it's our word choices and our thought choices that are keeping us pinned between this nice dead person and this monster person. And it's preventing us from getting to, here's what I need and here's what I'm requesting. If you think how simple that one is, what am I needing and requesting? It makes a big difference. So, Tom, you tell me what might be a ruminating thought that you might have between this nice dead person thought and this monster person thought about what you should get done or shouldn't get done, or what what one of your family members would like to happen 3 days ago and is still poking you with a stick about. So what's kind of showing up here as I put these 3 circles up here: nice dead person, monster person, and needs person?
Well, you know what? I've never been very good at self-reflection in my life. I think I've gotten better over time, but holding up a mirror to myself and understanding myself is not really one of my strong suits. When I saw this nice dead person and monster person come up on the screen here and hearing you talk about it, I'm thinking, wow, needs not being met, explosive anger, furious, reactive. I mean, we see this so much in our current political climate, and that's what I started to see. And I started to place individuals in there. And I think it happens on both sides. We see it all the time. This is, I think, part of why everybody feels there's so much dysfunction in Washington, and why, Congress won't work together. The other sides aren't working together because they are all trying to be this monster person.
Right. They've noticed that the monster person allows you to get elected, or the monster person is getting you to just have enough votes to be elected, and then also justifies or validates your position, that you then get to bring a monster person or a it has to be done this way. Now, yeah, you're going to win the battle in the monster person place, but you lose the war. So you'll win the battle at a monster person. You'll win a battle, but you will lose the war. You will, because the army of people that are submitting and being nice to that person go like, no, we're not doing that. So we saw that a little bit in the 2018 the midterms, right?
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, you want to do monster person? Yeah, we're coming. And by the way, we're coming in greater forces because we're going to watch this and we're not going to take that anymore. So you can't keep coming back to the monster person and actually get a sustained win. And this is where it gets really sad and disheartening, because if you're constructing a democracy that is inclusive with language, you've got to allow the monster person to express themselves. We're not interested in submitting, pressing that down, but instead of moving back to the first position, if you move to the third position, then it's easy to diffuse a person that goes into the monster person. And many, many politicians have no clue about what I'm talking about right now.
And that is really sad because they're in a position to be able to, they have the floor, if you will. They have the
That's right.
pulpit. They
That's right.
have, this ability to reach so many people. And if they would only choose their words more carefully and truly be thinking about, as you say, bringing their feelings and their needs together, their communication would be far more effective.
That's correct. That's right. And there it's going to land, and it's going to land further. It is never about policy or truth or facts. Just let that sucker sit in. It is not about who's going to have the right plan. It is not about who is going to have the right set of facts. It's not. It's just not.
Wait, are you saying the person that wins the election, let's just say metaphorically, whatever election, is not
Yes.
going to be the person with the best ideas? It's not
That's
going to
correct.
be the person that has the facts on their side.
That's correct.
It's going to be the person that communicates more effectively and
Connects.
connects. That's the great word.
It's got to connect with the pain that's alive.
Well, so I have a memory I want to share with you, and it's from, I want to say, gosh, I have to remember when this was, 2008 election, running up to it in the primaries, okay?
Yes.
And there were, interviews, I don't know if it was back-to-back Sundays or very close together, where Barack Obama is interviewed on 60 Minutes, and then Hillary Clinton is interviewed on 60 Minutes. And if you watch those two interviews side by side, I could see why Barack Obama was going to win the primary and be the candidate, because he would always talk about, we want to do this, we believe this. It was all we. And
The we part is important, and he was also including needs-based language in his narrative, so that the people were able to bring their emotions to their vote. Let me say it one more time: bring the emotion to the vote,
so
not
again,
vote for what's best.
right. Well, and when you listen to Hillary Clinton being interviewed, it was always, I believe this, I want to do this. It was
Correct.
very self-centered in how it was communicated.
That's correct.
Whether I think personally, I believe Hillary Clinton has a big heart and wants to truly help people, and she has lived a life of service to do that.
So skilled.
I personally believe that, but I could tell, wow, that message is not going to resonate. It's going to fall flat.
Yeah, it is. It falls flat because the viewer's language, the person's language, each one of these three circles, like if we put a psychological label to it, a simple psychological label to it, it's the nice dead person is in a position called selfless. Myself is less. I'm in a submissive position. The monster person is the position is selfish. You can't call them that because they are advocating for a need that's similar to ours. And then the third position is self-full. I am fully bringing mutual respect to your message, and then I'm going to respect my message and your message and my message. I'm going to bring mutual respect, and then it's the confidence about which person is actually going to be able to deliver what they are talking about. One of my favorite debate is between Ronald Reagan and George Bush. My favorite debate.
So this would have been in the primary season?
That's correct.
Prior to Ronald Reagan getting the nomination in the run up to 1980. Okay, I just want to make sure we understand.
That's right. Oriented. And you could YouTube that, and it sounds like two socialists, talking about how important, it is to have an open border between Mexico and the United States. And that, oh my gosh, it's like, and they're both talking about it. And the only difference is that, Reagan was an actor and George Bush wasn't, and he delivered the message a little cleaner than George Bush did. But they were basically talking about the same thing. And if they were trying to, with that message right now, they could not get, elected, because they sound like Democrats. They sound like, what are you guys doing? What are you? And and to be honest, they were both right about that. Their messages were, I'd take either one of them right now. Because of about at the same time, when a person is connected to the internal motivation of what need are they advocating for, instead of what they're going to do or what they can do, what happens then is that we're able to get out of the media's dancing back and forth between what is the next monster person tweet that is going to show up and what is going to be the next media monster person response to the monster person tweet. We're not going to take that anymore. Now, for the first 2 years, media spent more time in the nice dead person, for especially the first year of Trump, is they spent nice person. He's going to become presidential. He's going to pivot. He's going to see what the job is going to be like. He's going to be able to understand this is the role. No.
Won't he please?
No, there's no pivot. There's no pivot. It's like, it's monster person all the way. And he gets furious. I mean, this, and I have never, I don't have a personal experience of that directly, but one of my family members has a direct personal experience of that. It's like craziness in the sense of how the narrative, of monster person power over those. And look at the derogatory on the nice dead person, snowflake. See the derogatory?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't think that is really fully qualifying about what is actually happening. What's happening is that what is speaking truth to power is what is starting to take place. And truth is something that the monster person has realized that I can string it out. I can out marathon truth. Now think about what I just said. I can out marathon truth.
Yeah, I want to unpack that a little bit because sure. I mean, we talked about in a previous episode beliefs and how beliefs can be manipulated or altered at minimum. But truth, isn't it your position that truth actually is absolute? But now you're talking about it's succeeding in spite of truth, it sounds like, without running it.
Well, here's where it gets weird about the way truth really actually works and the way our brain physiologically responds to truth is that, like, Tom, let's suppose, and this is a metaphor. I don't have a slide available for this one right now, but I'll just talk through it. It's called the Bill Stierle truth pie. Okay, so the truth pie is like an apple pie. And the apple pie is sitting on the kitchen table at Thanksgiving. And the apple pie is behind me. But you, Tom, you can see the apple pie, but I cannot. So you see a fly come into the kitchen and you see it land on one of the corners of one of the slices of this apple pie. Do I see the fly? No, I don't see the fly. So your truth is there's a fly on the apple pie. I turn around a microsecond before that, the fly has lifted. I go, where? For me, there's no truth in that because I haven't seen it.
But it doesn't mean it didn't happen though, right?
That's correct. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. So all I've got to do is just keep talking about the possibility of it either not being there or the possibility of it being there. And now I am populating the belief either there is flies on the pie or there's no flies on the pie. So now just think about this conversation regarding truth, regarding global warming. There's flies on the pie. And one says, no, I have this research here done by this document that says it's been disproved. There's no flies on the pie. I want to drive the car the way I want. I want to ignore the environment. I don't want to. It's like, what are you doing? Well, it's, over, hundreds of thousands of years. It's like, no, there's flies on the pie. There's just a few flies on the pie, and we've got to really address how we keep putting flies on this pie, and because we're living on this thing.
Wow. Well, so now I think I see your, marathon or outrunning, truth
Good.
metaphor a bit, but might we also say that kind of like a horse that has blinders on, you're really, by someone who is, this monster person moving forward as fast as they can, they don't want to see the flies on the pie. They're ignoring the flies on the pie and making it so that they don't see it, almost like
That's right.
the toddler who is, not wanting to be seen and hides their eyes and thinks no one can see them because they can't see them back.
That's correct. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And the blinders is a great metaphor for what people do with truth. Is my belief structure is it has to be this person's in my tribe. I have voted for this person. I have got inspired by it. We're not going to take it anymore narrative, because that's actually where we're not going to take it any more, because our beliefs want to stay in place rather than the world has changed. Your beliefs can be yours, but they can't be everyone's, because the world keeps changing and moving. We are working and activating in the place of global existence now, whether you like it or not. And this is really where the truth is. And so somebody will put up a wonderful research piece or a documentary or some of the work that's being done with the talk shows, especially the comedic talk shows, is, hey, we want you to look at this part of the truth, and we're going to laugh about the flies you're putting on the pie over here, but really you got to kind of look at perspective here. And humor helps us with perspective, but it doesn't necessarily get us over to being in action, because we're still regrettably struggling with our language patterns and our belief patterns being stuck and being advocated for from a time that is long past. We're not in 50s America, and we're not, in 40s America and 50s America, where, oh my gosh, there's a lot of stability around. Wow, we were creating an economy that actually works and is balanced, and there's a lot of safety all the way to the end. Huh. Wow, how about that? So
Yeah,
it's so interesting.
What does that look like? Yeah, I would even sorry,
Go ahead.
I have a thought and I lost it.
Yeah. Well, the main thing about the nice dead person and the monster person, Tom, as your brain reboots a little bit, is the getting your need for being heard and contribution and the insights that show up in our brain, and the examples that come with it is just like, that's the way our mind works. They want to collaboratively work with, our given moment. And it's just really, really delightful to really just embrace the how do we get our needs met and the needs of another person. And there are times when they both can't be met at the same time. And there is, the truth is that, well, it's really sad that, and we feel disheartened about a certain type of work called coal mining is in the place of not being as financially feasible as it once was, or as needed as it once was, because of natural gas. That's what really has wiped out coal, was natural gas. It didn't, not the other things. So we're and even that truth, as I even speak it, and even as it's validated, the person's going like, no, solar and wind is doing. It's like, no, it's not natural. So anyways, it's hard to get
Well,
truth to take place.
isn't it? I agree with that. I mean, the whole coal thing, I think it's a really good example, because to me that was just a real serious example of, pandering to a lobby, or a icon of, American industry
Right.
that
Good thinking. That's right.
that that resonated with a lot of people in and still does, I think, today, in election cycles. But the truth, or the maybe the flies on the pie that those people who believe that do not see,
Right.
is that actually there are more jobs today in the United States in wind and solar, in a
Yes.
growing industry, not a shrinking industry, that is truly clean. And, as long as you don't believe that the windmills whirring generator noise doesn't cause cancer, as some people would have you believe.
Well, that's a good example of a monster person narrative, and it's trying to trigger and set a wind turbine next to a disease that's known and people have been affected by. It's I'm setting this thing next to this other thing, and I am going to brand and propagandize that to be, this is next to this. Now, most people logically would go, well, there's no evidence and it's not based upon it, but that's not what just happened. What just happened is I took this thing and set it next to this thing that's dangerous. Therefore, anytime I think of it, I think of the dangerous narrative. I don't think of the forward moving narrative, the positive narrative, because the brain will say cancer and that go together. You see how?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the tapping of the elephant brain, like we were talking about before, right? He just tapped that. And what he did was he tainted this very clean, free energy. I mean, not, you have to build windmills anyway, but I mean, it is relatively free. He just tainted it with one of the most, feared things in human existence.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, that's right. It's like that's the, most families have been touched by one family member somewhere in the last generation of, oh, they passed of cancer. Oh yeah, that's something that's going to be dangerous. What, wind turbines and and that being next to each other? And so what happens is that that's the way truth gets hijacked, is that I am going to create an enemy image, or and a dangerous image with this thing that is really not dangerous, but it's something I am an advocate for, and the people that I advocate for are going to do. It's like, would, if push come to shove, if somebody comes to my front door and says, hey, listen, just came here from another country, kind of getting killed there. Do you have any, can I borrow your backyard to put a, sleeping bag in? I go, well, for a time being, that'll work okay for me, but we need an exit strategy for you to move and get on your own. Is that okay to come up with an exit strategy in the next 30 days? The person then says, well, yeah, I kind of would like an exit strategy. As I get to that exit strategy, can anything I can do for you here? It's sort of like, yeah, there's a lot of things you can do for me. So that becomes a bartering narrative, bartering time for support. See, human beings are naturally collaborative, naturally cooperative. They're not naturally competitive. You have to do something to become competitive. And this particular belief is a very, very old belief. And it comes somewhere in chapter 4, I think it is. Chapter 4 in Darwin's Origin of Species. So if you think about the Darwin Origin of Species, and as soon as a religious person hears the Darwin Origin Species, they go, oh my gosh. No. That's
counter to their beliefs.
Counter to their belief structure. Right. So it's going to believe. So let's go and peel that one back for a microsecond here. The belief is, if you think about one sentence or maybe a couple sentences that would come from that book that lasted? What would be a belief that would come out of there that, what does a species need to do?
Needs to evolve.
Yes. And what it's survival of.
Yeah, the fittest or natural selection, right?
Right. So now you did two things together. So you said the fittest and then natural selection. Did you see how you had those two things? So
Right.
those are two different concepts. Tom, have you ever started a book and didn't finish reading it? Have you ever done that?
Yes.
Yeah. Me too. Like hundreds, right? Okay. So, right. So me too. And in chat at the beginning of the book, he actually goes into this survival of the fittest piece. And many people got to that thing. Oh, this book is about survival of the fittest. But later in the book, he gets into the thing called natural selection. Now, here's when it gets really weird and really upsetting at the end. At the end of the book, he says, if a species does not co-evolve together and one species wipes out their food source in a competitive nature, they go extinct. Collaboration and cooperation is what species do when they co-evolve with their environment. Tom, human beings are not co-evolving with their environment, are they?
No.
We're dominating the environment. We're not co-evolving. And the rest of the species are going like, we can't make enough fish to sustain this species. We can't have enough plants to sustain this species. We can't have enough. You see what happened is that we're actually taking survival of the fittest. We're the fittest, but that's what Darwin is actually warning about, is that if the person is dominating, surviving because you're the fittest person, you're up for extinction next because you're actually not in harmony or collaboration with your environment, with all the different species. So all the different species are plummeting, forget about reptiles, in 200 years or 100 years. And the person alive today will go like, who cares about reptiles? We'll keep them in a zoo. I'd never seen any of this. There'll be pictures of it. There'll be a documentary. He'll be really sad about the dodo once it's gone. It's like, no, the web of life, as soon as you start pulling on it, the web doesn't work so well. These other things are pulling on each other. Get rid of bees.
Everything would get out of balance and harmony with each other and sustaining each other. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. So, Bill, a question has popped in my mind as we were talking about, the monster person, and especially the windmill cancer. And I think I used the term false equivalency last time. I guess maybe you don't like that term so much, but it's a good label to start. Labels are an okay place to start, Tom, but as soon as you say false equivalency, now you have to get into, say, what level of truth is this one part of truth and what level of truth is this part of truth? Okay, so that's what a false equivalency. Well, but raising them and putting them next to each other and associating them, as equal,
They're
right?
Not equal.
Right. Well, so clearly the current president, it would appear, is a master at doing this. But my question is that intentional or is it instinctual?
Well, there's a little bit of his habit brain that has been brought up to speak and think this way. It has been a very successful narrative because of it, because he's been able to speak and think the way. It's very easy. He speaks in three ways. There's a reward, there's an anticipation, and there's uncertainty on whether or not he's going to get it. And he'll keep ruminating between those three pieces. All of those three sentences are called dopamine hitters. They all make the dopamine in the person sit up, listen, react, embody, engage. So a tweet is just, and you can watch tweets and you can watch them. Is there a reward? Yeah. Is there an anticipation? Yes. Is there uncertainty? Yes. Is it in your face? Absolutely. Okay. So now all of a sudden it is to keep engagement moving forward, because that's what branding is. Engagement. Coca-Cola, engagement. Pepsi, engagement. It's an engagement process. It's not a truth process. It's an engagement process. It's trying to keep the brain paying attention to this product or service. So Trump's product and Trump's service is all he's doing is keeping people engaged in it. The content is not as important.
And he's dominating the airwaves, sucking all the air out of the room to talk about other things that may be more important, more meaningful, or might meet other people's,
Right.
needs.
That's correct. That's right. Yeah, the needs of the few get to run underneath the radar, and that's really, really disheartening, because what winds up happening is that it's not that it's communism doesn't win, socialism doesn't win, democracy doesn't win. What wins is who gets the strongest branding imprint to distract from people meeting their needs at the expense of others. And again, we're back in the competitive survival of the fittest is the survival of the brander. It's the survival of the imprinter. I just got to keep my negative message in front.
So imagine if someone who had true, I guess, more caring bones in their body to have more empathy for, the country at large, the world at large. Like you said, cooperation is necessary for us to, sustain ourselves.
Yeah, and a healthier, much more healthier form of capitalism. It is a much healthier form of capitalism. The healthier form of capitalism is here's a healthy form of capitalism. If I take 10 internet companies and get them to compete against each other in a nation, those 10 companies in that nation, they're going to be looking at cost cutting, efficiency, margin stuff, being more effective. And they're going to keep working on quality. I have 4G, I have 5G. Okay. I'm able to do that, right? Great. Well, wouldn't it be great if we had like 8G? Wouldn't that be good?
Sure.
Great. Some countries do that because they have 10 companies competing. But if you don't have anybody competing, you can deliver 4G or 5G, and the person's got to suck eggs while the rest of the other country that's competing in a cooperative way is actually getting the better service at a lower price. And that's the story of South Korea and the United States. I just gave you an example of cooperative, and they're working against each other to say, we're a little better, we're a little better, we're a little better, we're a little more efficient, we're doing this, we're trying to get your eyeballs and like this. But they're working and they're doing things in a, how can we make it better for the customer? Whereas in America is, how can we make it better for the company? How can we wipe out the competition? How can we buy out the person?
Isn't that interesting?
We're going to buy out the person. Why we want to compete with the person? Why don't we just buy him out, give the money to their shareholders, bring them in, and wipe out the competition, because then I don't have to price.
I don't have to innovate. I don't have to be more efficient. I don't have to cut my overhead or my cost to be more profitable. Yeah, that makes sense. But what about in our political climate? If we had somebody who understood and believed in the cooperation and had empathy, and then actually learned to communicate better, like we've been talking about, I mean, my gosh, they would win. Right?
That's correct. Yeah, they actually win from the place of is, I don't want to be exhausted by a monster person's narrative. I'm going with the person that is at least making some sense about how can we get the need for mutual respect to be met. And Barack Obama did that pretty well. He goes, what we really need to do is empathize with the other side. We need to put ourselves in that person's shoes. yeah, the competition can't keep going like this. And he got elected the first round by that thing. I remember an interview where he says, put yourself in somebody else's shoes, see what they're going for, work with them. Now, they took advantage of that for about the first year, but then after that, he figured out, oh, I got the game. Here's the game, and we're moving forward. And yeah, we're going to consider them, but we're not going to deal with the obstruction piece as much.
Right.
Yeah, and then, well, you see what happens is, well, then all of a sudden, they were able to create all kinds of stories, put more flies on the truth pie, to believe that, wait a minute, he's going in a direction that the nation doesn't want to. And that wasn't true at all. It was, he's going in the direction the nation want to, but they all fell back asleep in the nice dead person. Now the savior's here. He's going to take over. It's like, oh, no. You got to stay active in the third circle and advocate for your needs and watch out for the other people trying to get their needs met at your expense, because they're in the cannibal capitalistic model, power over monster person. If I could put any more labels and diagnoses here, I could do it, right? And the labels diagnosis is, like I said earlier, is a good place to start. But the healthier place, the adult place, the place that is really one that is going to get us out of this place that we're in, the wedge that we're in, is going like, wait a minute. This is the way this one works. I guess we can go to, the Russian model where there's, 13 major, billionaires, and everyone else is, as Malcolm Nance would say, they're a trailer park with nuclear weapons. It's like everyone else is poor because
Right.
because these other people have sustained and embodied their wealth in one and aggregated in one place. And gosh, it just doesn't create a vibrant economy, and it doesn't create an experience of people having joy in their life. Who wants to be joyous waiting and desperately for their check to come every Friday and go paycheck over paycheck? Who wants to do that? Who wants to go years without a vacation? Who wants to do that? That's not what we got to get ourselves into a balance of being in life at the same time as doing in life, not just become human doings.
Oh, I like that. That's a great message there, Bill.
So
maybe we should let that one marinate, and maybe that's a good place to wrap up today.
It is. It's a good spot. Tom, I feel delighted that we went over this, this concept of the 3 states of waking up, and just catch yourself at moments where you're really submitting and being the nice dead person and go like, wait a minute, I don't have to be in that spot. I can go over and say, hey, listen, I just need 5 more minutes in order to fix this. Or would you be willing to leave the house in another 15 minutes rather than in the next 3 minutes? And just ask for what your need is rather than getting to, no, I have too much stuff to do. It's like, oh my gosh. Of course you do. But, I just need a little consideration here, to move forward. Anyway, so this has been great, Tom. So until next time.
Okay, Bill. Thanks so much.
Thanks a million. Thanks. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.